Hi, everybody. This is Katie Joe, and this is Sovereign Soul Podcast. And this is talking about having your own spiritual authority to decide for you what is true for you. Because so many of our beliefs and so many of our ideas about how society works is perpetuated upon us. And we're so inundated in that we don't even know that we're in it. In fact, one of my favorite metaphors, and I don't know where the story comes from, is these two young fish are swimming in the pond and they're chatting, and this older fish comes by and he says to the younger fish, he says, "Good morning." And they say, "Good morning." And he says, "Water's great today." And they go, "Yep, it sure is." And the older fish swims away. And the two fish say, "What's water?" And it's just because it's so normal to them, they have no idea that there's something outside of them. When I talk about religion, a lot of times the way that I use the metaphor of it is simply this: our religions are like a coat that's been put upon us, and it's usually done through the good intentions of those around us, people who care about us or who want the best for us. I think that whether it's parents or society or missionaries or whatever it is, when they are conveying spiritual concepts, when they're giving us religion, whatever it is, they're doing that with an intention to keep you warm from the cold, metaphorically. So they're placing a coat upon you and they're teaching you this is what God is, this is how you live, this is the rights, this is the wrongs, this is how you pray, this is how you go to church, this is what you wear, this is what you drink, this is what you don't drink, all of these things. And so when that happens, we grow up and we don't even necessarily recognize that we can function without the coat. Or we think if I don't wear the coat, then I have to run around naked in the cold, and that's not going to work. And there's this big fear that comes along with it. So, what I would like to offer is the invitation that you can decide for you whether you want to wear a coat or whether you don't. And just because you take the coat off doesn't mean that you're running around naked. You can put on a sweater. You can tailor the coat. You can modify the coat. You can decide to wear the coat sometime and take it off another time. When the weather's warm, you can put on a t-shirt. You get to decide how you want to interact with the cold and with the storm. And I think that it's all of benefit for us. And the intentions, my true thoughts are that the intentions are and were originally good. I believe that the origins of religions weren't about control. I think that the way that religions began was that there were those that were having a conversation with this omnipotent source, and they were tuning into it and awakening to the mysteries and the laws of the universe. And they were sharing with their friends, and they were going through rituals and practices that were awakening that and activating that, and that they were bringing a code of magic to life, of connection, peace, and joy, of this empowerment that we can connect to something beyond us and that we can access something beyond us, that this idea of before and after, that this life had meaning. I think that originally that's how it began, and that people began to come together and to share that and to process these experiences. And through that idea of power, through the human psyche, because the human psyche has always been the human psyche, that over time it gets contorted to, you see the original shamans or you see the original prophets that are doing something and they're praying a certain way or they're doing ceremony a certain way, and then they're sharing it because they find this of value. They're saying, I really have found value in this. This really made my life. There's something here. They share it with them closest to them. Other people that are closest to them go, oh my gosh, I'm finding value in this too. This is making a difference in my life. And so they begin to do it. And let's get together every so often and let's do it. And so all of a sudden it becomes this code of how you do it, when really there's a billion codes available to us. But for this, they're like, this works, this works. And then those people that are seen to be able to connect to spirit and connect to and lead the groups, now let's support them financially. Now let's ask them for the answer because they're doing this practice. And over time, what happens is we actually sell ourselves out, because instead of saying, what's a practice for me, we now look and say, well, how do they do it? That's the way you do it. And all of those ways are meant to be like a holding place. So, and then with that also comes money, comes in power, comes in prestige, comes in title. And now it's turned into this animal that's so different than the origin of what it began as. And I feel like that could be, and that is a story of religion. And with that being said, there's also been so much good that has occurred because of religion. You see religions all over the world that are feeding the hungry, the sick, and the poor, that are showing up, and they're doing bedside service for those who are passing away or for those who are grieving. They're creating communities, and they're looking out for their neighbors. And is there a double-edged sword of this? Sure. Can that also bring in judgment? Can that also bring in outcasting, like they're not like us? There's all this that comes with it, but there's also so much good that comes with it as well. But what I specifically see is, as the religions in a lot of the world have turned patriarchal, but even beyond that, when we look at that as an authority outside of ourselves, I see, and was raised in the Mormon culture where a lot of it is like, what should I do? Well, what does the scripture say? What should I do? What does the prophet say? And versus saying, what should I do? I need to discern this for myself. And here's what I want to convey. It doesn't mean don't read scriptures. It doesn't mean don't look to leaders, prophets, guides, wise ones for their advice, because definitely do. But understand the decision is up to you. And all of their guidance might be good, but we for ourselves have to decide for ourselves. And so, how do you pray? This is one way. Here is another way. How do you connect to source? Here is one way. Here is another way. What is your experience? And share it. So when we move through all of that, I feel like the purpose is to not just be in your own spiritual sovereignty, your own authority, but by doing that, you're granting permission to everyone else. And kind of flipping it on the other side, when you start to be seen as somebody with spiritual authority, it can be really gratifying to have people turn to you to ask questions and things like that. And it can be easy to be seduced by power to think, oh, well, they should be doing what I think, and da 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 da. But I also, and I hesitate to say this, but I'll say this. I've seen that happen to me when I was doing the drum circles and I began to become pretty well known in my community. I started to get all of these questions or these private Facebook messages or these private social media posts asking, hey, I'm going through this hard time and I don't know what to do. What would you suggest? And I'd see these people that were still not understanding their own sovereignty. And instead, a lot of them would leave a church, and they've now unattached to the church, but now they're trying to attach onto something else. And in that circumstance, in many circumstances, it was me. And I often say at my drum circles or my events, and I would say, I'm not a therapist. I would suggest you talk to therapists. I don't know. Like, I can only share what I share. And what I do is this: I teach my classes, I do my drum circles. This is what I do. But knowing what to do in your situation, I don't know. I'm not somebody who can answer to that. And quite honestly, I don't want that authority. I don't want that responsibility. I can sit with you and I can listen, but I absolutely don't know your answers. I can share with you my story and share my story of life and loss and tragedy and triumph and all of these things. And I can give you guidance from my place, but I'm still not telling you how you should do it. And one of the things that I feel like is the most harmful in religions is, I love the origins of it, but I feel like as it's become contaminated and twisted in so many ways, I feel like the idea that if you don't do this prayer this way, say the words this way, live this way, that this idea that's put upon people that you're going to go to heaven or hell, or that you're not going to make it, or you're not going to see your family, is so damaging. And people are living in fear and trauma and pain. And I don't know that any of that's true. What if we're just here to create, to be, to grow? and what creates more joy and peace in the world. So the origins of religion, I absolutely love. And I do absolutely love so much about religion that does so much humanitarian work in the world and so much service. But I think it's up to every single one of us to recognize that that spiritual authority is within, and that line and that direct connection to source is between you and source, regardless of any of that.